Okay.
Let's roll.
I'm still under the weather, but I'm here. I don't have COVID. Tested 3 times, but yeah, so I will call this workshop to order. Do we have an agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Okay, so good morning. I'd like to call to order the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners. Penny for Pasco Joint Workshop? No. Okay, I got the wrong one.
Yeah.
I think it's this one.
You're good.
Okay, so there's no script, and we don't need a script.
You don't need a script.
Just calling the, I wonder why that was there.
I don't know.
We're trying
Okay.
to confuse you.
Yeah. All right.
Invocation.
Invocation pledge.
Oh, okay, we'll do the invocation and the pledge.
Roll.
And roll.
O merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
District 1, Commissioner Richey.
Here.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Here.
District 4, Commissioner Fitzpatrick. Here. District 5, Commissioner Mariano.
Here.
District 3, Chairman Starkey.
Here. Okay, so, thanks. Do I need to move that away?
We'll probably continue to adjust them during the day.
Okay, they're pretty cool, though. New technology for us.
It's been 3 years since we've done this.
With these?
No, it's been 3 years since we've sat around table.
Oh, I know,
Workshop.
but Commissioner Starkey
First time we've
likes
had
budget
these.
workshops. I think it's important for the public to hear how we're spending their money. So, so thank you everyone for coming, and I'm going to turn this over to you, County Administrator.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So Commissioners, we've sat down over the last couple of weeks and kind of gone through at a high level where we are. Before I turn over to Bob and let him go into the slides, just remind everybody again that we do not have the preliminary assessed values yet from the property appraiser, and so you will see no recommendations as part of this. You'll just see kind of where we are from a budget perspective, some trends, and then what it looks like going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to our budget director, Bob, and let him run through the slides without a Star Wars tie on.
Good morning.
Morning.
Shaking things up here with no Star Wars ties. Bob Gorg, Pasco County Budget Director. This morning, we just wanted to go through the budget with you, very preliminary budget to let you know where we are with the budget, what's happening, the new initiatives that have been presented by staff, and then to give you the opportunity to weigh in on the budget so we can get your feedback on the budget before we finalize the budget. And so we're talking about new revenues. We don't have the final numbers from the property appraiser yet, as Dan's mentioned. And so the scenario that we're working with is if the taxable assessed values increased at the same rate this year as they did last year, at about 10.8%, which is not a crazy assumption given the amount of construction going on in the county. That would be a 10.8% increase. That would increase property tax revenues by about $27.2 million. If we cascade that down, available to the sheriff, as you know, the agreement with the sheriff would take 40% of that for almost $10.9 million, leaving $16.3 million. After that, if we deduct the payments to the taxable increment financing trust fund and for the community redevelopment agencies, that's $3.63 million. That leaves $12.7 million or so for the board to spend on new initiatives and ongoing expenditures. If we do the same kind of math for the fire fund, the increase in the fire fund last year was 12.6%, and that would yield about $7.3 million in additional revenue for the fire MSTU fund. So starting out with the big picture, you can see we are recommending a budget that has no increase in the operating millage of 7.6076 mils, no increase in the fire MSTU millage of 1.8036, no change in the stormwater assessment of $95 per ERU. The water and wastewater rates will increase in accordance with the 4-year resolution, and the combined rate of that's about 2.7%. And then we are on year 4 of the solid waste 7 for 7 plan, and as you know, that 7 for 7 plan is allowing us to accumulate the funds to be able to purchase the fourth burner for the solid waste, waste to energy plant. Some of the things, we saw the revenue, so we want to talk about what are some of the expenditures that come right off the top. The cost of fuel, as you see, it's up around $4.50 a gallon now. So last year, for fiscal year 22, we budgeted about $2.65 per gallon. We're up to about $3.65 per gallon as of right now. And so the reason our budgeted expenditures for gasoline is lower than what you see at the pump is because the county doesn't pay tax on the fuel that we purchase. Inflation, we've all seen inflation at 8.5%. That is really hitting our departments that rely heavily on building, vehicles, and IT. So those costs continue to escalate. We have the compensation and classification study going on that will allow our employees to remain competitive with the surrounding areas, and we have added the corrections officers from the detention center into that comp and class study to make sure that they are paid fairly. Fire Station 3, that's in the Beacon Woods area, State Road 52 and US 19, that's coming online. Medical supplies for the rescue unit, just because as the number of trips increases, of course, the amount of supplies needed is increasing. We have employee retirement, employee health care. Starkey Park, as you know, we have agreement with the developer of Starkey Park, and it's kind of on a sliding scale. So as we go forward, the developer takes on less of those expenditures and the county picks up more of those expenditures. And then finally, contribution to the state Medicaid, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And so one of the issues, hot topics right now is fire rescue, and we wanted to point out specifically some of the enhancements to the fire rescue department, depending on the taxable assessed values received from the property appraiser. We have the negotiated wage increase with the union. We have rescues 223 and 226 that we're recommending come online, and these rescues will help out in those areas with the high call volume. We have a peak hour rescue unit, which it's actually 2 units that we're starting this fiscal year, and we would like to continue those for next year. And we talk about peak hour, that's an ambulance service that will run for 12 hours per day. And they are paramedics only, so they won't be firefighters staffing those units. Currently, their thinking is they'll be at stations 9 and 17, but they will be moved around depending on the call volume and where they are needed. We have the staffing adjustment of 25 additional FTE. That is to help us get overtime under control. We have a marine unit training. So as you know, there is a marine unit, a boat that is being purchased, currently being built for us that the board has approved. We should receive that boat shortly. We wanted to send our folks through training to make sure that they can properly and safely operate that rescue boat. And then finally, station house furniture and equipment. This is a fancy name for what the Chief Casson likes to say is he runs the largest hotel in the county. So we have a number of fire stations where we have firefighters living there, 600 firefighters living there 24/7. Stuff wears out, refrigerators, mattresses, chairs break. And currently, our firefighters have to scratch and claw to find the money to replace a refrigerator and that kind of thing. And so we said, well, why don't we just put some money in the budget for that kind of stuff? So this will be the first year that we'll put money in there, and so that just for those quality of life things for the firefighters living in those stations. So now we want to talk about the major funds and the changes in those major funds since last year.
Hey, Bob,
Yes, sir.
the Life Skin and Wellness Program is a pretty good program, too.
Pardon me?
The Life Skin and Wellness Program.
Absolutely. So the life scan that's part of the union agreement. And so it's for all of our firefighters to annually, is it annually, Chief? Yes, sir. Annually go through a life scan to make sure that we catch any kinds of cancers or any kind of diseases early.
Oh, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just on that, we had a meeting the other day, and Dan, the chief, and I, and some other folks. We were trying to look for, I think it was about 250 more K, so they could bring that in-house. Are we gonna see that anywhere now, or are we gonna work
You
through
wouldn't
that?
see that in this presentation, if that would be a budget amendment this fiscal year.
Okay.
Say that again? What
So, and I can do we want the chief to probably explain that?
So, Commissioners,
or the Dan
they're exploring the option instead of contracting it out with some of the issues we have, contracting it, bringing that operation in-house.
The life scan?
Yeah, but in order to stand it up, we need about another $250K.
Yeah.
So about $250,000 to stand that up in-house, and so, we're working through that right now.
We need an AR.
Is that a
ARP.
machine, is the issue of some kind of machine that's costly, or is it, because why can't our clinics do that?
It's additional to what our clinic can do. So we're working through that, ma'am. We're not ready to bring something to the board yet, but we're working through the process. So that was just something that came up in the meeting last Thursday.
So I'm going to talk about the changes in operating expenditures for the major funds. When we talk about operating expenditures, there's no capital, no reserves in these numbers. And so you can see the general fund, which is our largest fund, increased by almost 7.7%. And of course, the things we talked about earlier, the must-pays, fuel, inflation, contracts, software contracts, all those kinds of things are the reason behind those particular increases. We see the largest increase here is for the tourism development, and that's because this board increased the fifth penny hotel bed tax. And so our tourism department is going to be using those funds for international outreach and other types of promotions. We see the stormwater fund increasing by almost 4%, and that's almost totally due to the inflationary costs of construction materials. We have the wastewater fund at 8.5%, and we can see that those increases are due to increases in fuel and growth. And finally, solid waste fund there, 6.2%, due to inflationary increases as well as continuing to take trash outside the county.
If I could,
Yes, sir.
Tourist Development Tax Fund, we talked about getting it through before legislature, so it was a lot easier to get it done now.
Exactly.
And the outsiders pay it that are coming in to visit us. We spent a lot of money on the Wesley Chapel side, building that part, which has been phenomenal. I mean, it's been a great success and really boosted tourism everywhere. I want to make sure we take a look, not just to do an outreach program internationally, whatever, but I want to look at doing capital projects over here. Could be the boat ramp down at Enclode, could be Sunwest improvements, could be other improvements that'll help, even Hudson Beach, to bring more tourism by infrastructure too. So I don't want to be just cut with that one line of saying it's going to be for
Absolutely.
marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll bring that to their attention. Kathy's ears are perked up over there. We'll make sure that that message gets through to them.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
So just on that, you mentioned boat ramps. There's that money set aside that we allocated for boat ramps previously when we did the Wiregrass Sports Campus at Pasco County. So I think that's in Commissioner or Chair Starkey's district, if I'm not correct.
No, that's in Jackson.
No, ma'am, he's talking about the work we're doing at Enclode.
Oh, at Enclode, yeah,
That's
that's in
being
my-
paid for
yeah.
with part of the loan
Yes.
that we
That's
get from
what, with,
Wiregrass.
yeah. Just as a reminder, we may have a youth sports complex coming that will also require some of our fiscal attention, too.
We're waiting on to see what the state does.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, obviously this, there's certain things you can do and not do with that fund, as you know. You can talk to Kathy about or our DMO director, Adam Thomas, but they have a plan. But funds can, only be allocated in certain manners, so we want to make sure we take heed to that. That's a state statute, what you can use it for.
Absolutely. Okay, now just focusing on the general fund departments, we see an overall increase of 6.7% here. We can see some of the major changes are the court technologies. The Pasco County, Pinellas County are in the 6th Judicial Circuit, and we're required to fund state attorney, public defender, those kinds of things. This increase is almost wholly due to the software. STAC is the software for the public defender's office. We see the fire rescue increase 13.3% in the general fund. A lot of that was, of course, fuel. Fuel's a big expenditure, as is maintenance of the equipment. We have information technology at 6.4, almost 6.5%. Of course, that's increases in software contracts, inflationary impact on hardware, that kind of stuff. And then finally, emergency management. You notice that has decreased, but we haven't actually decreased emergency management. What happened was we had a community risk coordinator that was funded from the general fund. That position has been transferred to a different fund because it was more appropriate that other fund pay for that position. So we haven't actually reduced it. We've just reduced the expending in the general fund. Municipal Services Fund, we see animal services increasing just a little over 2%, emergency services by 4.7%. Big part of this increase is the new software that we'll be purchasing that will allow residents to text 911. And so that's kind of the text to 911 there. We have Parks and Rec, almost 3%, and that's the E-lamp operations, and that's just the normal ongoing kinds of operational expenses with that. As you know, outside funding, the board generously funds other organizations outside the county. The biggest, of course, is Medicaid, almost 7.5%, and this is imposed on the county by the state. And we haven't gotten the fiscal year 23 cost for that yet, but just based on historic increases, that will increase by about $400,000 to $500,000 next year. The other area that increased was this public assistance and burials, and that's primarily due to increased expenditures related to burying indigent
Madam Chair?
citizens.
Yep.
I think it's just important for the audience and people watching from home. Statutorily, which ones, I know the answer, but if you could go over which ones we're actually required by statute to fund, because some of those we are not required by statute to fund. Obviously Medicaid, Health Department, daycare.
Yes, sir.
I think those are
Medicaid, the public assistance, we're required by state statute, public assistance, burials, health department, legal services, daycare. Those are all required by state statutes. The others are contributions by the board to those organizations.
Okay, thank you.
So the general fund, municipal services fund, these are the business plan initiative requests, and for the members of the public, any department that requests new funding, we call that a business plan initiative. There are over 140 business plan initiatives up there. We ask our department directors to, anything that you believe you might need, put it in there, because if you don't ask, you definitely won't get it. And so there are over 140 there, and the list of those business plan initiatives were sent out as part of the agenda. So everyone has those, and we'll have some here as well if anyone would like to look at those. We have capital investments in the 2023 budget. Of course, we have building renovations. That's part of the facility master plan. That's at about $1.2 million per year. IT, hardware, and software, just to keep up with that fast-growing area, as well as cybersecurity. That's a little over $2 million. We have the central facilities management building, and that was approved last year. The design of that was approved and the construction approved. This year, currently facilities management, the central part is in the fire station out there at Land O'Lakes, which will be demolished to be rebuilt. And so this building will be house the facilities management out there. Parks and Rec, we set aside $300,000 a year for Parks and Rec to renovate their fields, and that gives us about 6 to 8 fields per year that we can renovate. Mitchell Park, we started the drainage and flood control design out there. Parks maintenance, this is just the ongoing kinds of capital maintenance at those parks. Playgrounds break, those kinds of things.
Paul, if I could stop you?
Yes, sir.
On the Mitchell Park, before we do anything on that, we talked about Newport Corners coming in. We're gonna have some acres over there that could take some fields. We've talked about Magnolia Valley, what could happen out front with the high grounds. Before I go spend the money, I wanna go look at the plan, what we're gonna do with that area.
Very good.
Because those parks, you could change, bring fill in, raise it up about 3 feet, make it so it's dry, so when it rains, it doesn't rain out. Like softball fields, a little bit of rain, they're gone. Softball fields, they get wet, they get torn up when they're wet as well. We can do a lot better out there. So it's not just a matter of drain and flood control, it's gonna be an investment. So I think we should be taking a look at the whole thing. Timing's gonna be important. If we're gonna shut down fields in some way, we wanna make sure the other fields are built that they can transfer over to while they're gonna go.
Absolutely.
And Keith has a plan for that. We'll get him to come in and brief you.
Yeah.
Brief all of
Oh,
us.
okay.
There's a discussion for all of us to have.
I wanted to give you an update on the fire stations that are funded by the general obligation bond. And so you see we have 2 fire stations currently under construction. Fire Station 17, which is an existing station, it was raised and is being rebuilt. And Station 9, Suncoast Lakes, and that Station 9 is nearly complete, and that will come online in July. We're expecting that station to come online. We have a number of stations in the design phase and a number of stations that are working through the process to be bid, and I believe Station 3 is the next station to be put out to bid.
Yes, in the next week or two.
Question about those?
Yeah.
So the next two, even like 2 and 4, starting architectural work. I know we make little tweaks and improvements. I know the civil work is different for every site, but if we're just starting architectural work, that's kind of scary. Should we pretty well have what we're gonna go build from the previous ones to what we're gonna do?
Well, the buildings are effectively designed, but they have to be site adapted. So 2 and 4 will just both
But
have
just
to be site
it's really the
adapted.
civil work, not the architectural.
Well, and you gotta make sure the footprint of the building fits on the site. So, like the 17 footprint is different than what we're gonna build, than what we're building at 9. So again, you still have to site adapt for 2 and 4 and for any of the other facilities we're doing. So that they aren't exactly identical buildings.
I mean, they should be pretty close, no?
They are pretty close, but you still have to do site adapt in the civil design and then go through the design process.
I mean, if I'm gonna buy land that's gonna house a facility, I would think I would buy enough land that I could build the same structure over and over again, so I'm not duplicating costs. Granted, you gotta look at what's out there, but there should be enough land that should be constrained to make that work.
They're pretty similar, but remember, we don't always put exactly, there's a base operation that goes in a fire station, and then there's other things that go in there based on the needs in the immediate area. So sometime there is a little flex between fire stations and what we build,
I have a
based on
question.
the operational needs, so.
Right, I have a question. Why can't we put any numbers to any of these pages? Like, I would love I was just watching the Polk County's budget and state of the county presentation, and they were putting like values on things like this, so
Sure. It's easy.
I think it would be important for us to be able to say to our constituents, we're spending X million dollars
Well, I mean,
on new.
The total bond value's already been approved, so we can add that.
Yeah, but I think it would be good to say what we're spending this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair?
And then
Thanks.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Just to add on a little bit. So I see Fire Station 3, Beacon Woods, currently with purchasing in the county attorney's office. What can we do, Eric, when it comes to purchasing, to prioritize? So I know, obviously, when you move something up, or you prioritize something else bumps down. But when we're talking about public safety, obviously, that should take priority. So what can we do to,
There is an administrator's priority list to the county attorney's office anyway,
okay,
that lists out all mostly procurement items where the administrator feels that they are the top priorities. Number 3, fire station number 3 is number 4 on the current ranking. And that's what we prioritize our reviews unless the board directs otherwise for some reason.
so for
yeah.
example, thank you, what's 1, 2, and 3?
Let me look, I'll have to open my
I
spreadsheet.
didn't pick it up off the printer before I came down, I'm sorry.
One is our Frontier contract for internet service, so that's been one I've had to, I can't remember, extend 3 times administratively while we wait.
What about the stormwater master
Stormwater master
plan?
plan is number 2, yes.
The third one is, so the Sherlock, you can probably speak better to what that is, chief, one of our rescues.
Yeah, collections for ambulance.
Ambulance billing, and then number 4 is fire station 3.
So, just asking the rest of my board, I mean, do you think 3 should be reprioritized?
Well, I want to ask this question. If we're doing all these fire stations, how different is one contract from another? It seems like it should be a pretty standard contract with just a few, what's the difference? You're putting a sink here, you're putting a sink there. I mean, what do we have to go over with the fine tooth comb?
Madam Chair,
Wait, no, I want them to answer.
it goes with
The general conditions, supplemental conditions, generally pretty straightforward. It's the same architect, so they should have had the same general supplemental conditions, the other ones. that went out to
Yeah,
bid.
so why?
The specific plans for what the contractor's gonna build may be adjusted, because obviously the site's a little different, so there will be some, but that's not necessarily part of what needs to be reviewed. It's really the contractor provisions, so which is really the general and supplemental conditions.
So I want to ask the county attorney, is there Is there a big difference between one fire station and another? And purchasing, I don't know if anyone's here from purchasing, but.
The request for proposal for the invitation for bid, depending on what it is, should be very similar in terms of general and specific conditions.
Right.
But like the specs, the actual, what epoxy we put down isn't necessarily part of what, would be reviewed as part of the procurement process. That's a design element.
So then can Station 2 and 4 be put on the fiscal budget for this year?
No, ma'am. They're already
But
being,
you're
they're
telling
already
me it
on
takes
design.
9 months to do the architectural work. There should be a way to streamline it so it's not taking 9 months. And if we already have the funding, then we should move forward with Station 2 and Station 4.
They are moving forward in the design process.
In the
And
following
when
year
we're
for the fiscal
ready
budget.
to bring them forward for construction, will be late '23, early '24.
I would like to see it in 23 because it's needed now, not then.
No, I understand.
Madam
Well,
Chair?
it's imperative.
Commissioner Mariano.
Thank you.
I mean, when McDonald's goes and builds a building, they build the same one over and over again.
Yeah,
They go over, in all the other industries, you get people that live in one area that kind of travel all over the world, all over the country, and they put the same structure up. I don't know why at this point, especially when we have these bonds and prices are rising on different things, why we can't just make, this is what we're gonna build, it's gonna go here, here, and here. And this way here, when every firefighter goes from one spot to another, they know exactly what they got.
or we have a couple of models, and you can have model A, B, or C on this, and just
The
go.
buildings are similar.
And if
but
there's
you
an
have to
upgrade
site
that
adapt.
needs to be changed, oh, well, we need this now, or after being here for a year, we know we need this equipment, then we can just make those tweaks and adjustments.
That's part of the design process that they're going through.
But why does it take 9 months?
Because you have to do the civil site adaptation. So you have to do the civil work and adapt it to the site, because every site's different. Every site has different site constraints, different access points, all that's different
Right.
at every site. And so you have to go through that process.
Madam Chair?
Yep,
So we've owned the site at Beacon Woods for years, right? Why didn't get the civil get done on that immediately?
So I want to remind the board that before we even took the bond to the voters in 2018, we outlined a phasing program for all 9 fire stations so that we could build them, one, when we had capacity to build them, and when we had capacity to fund the operation inside the fire station. So right now, 2 and 4, we don't have the funds in '23 to actually operate them if they opened in '23. So you can't, so that was a request made by the board to make sure that we phase them, and so that when we opened a fire station, we could operate the fire station. And so that's what we've done. COVID delayed that to a certain extent, but they're still being built in the effective, in very similar to the phasing program you saw in 2018, before we ever sent the bond to the voters.
So having said that, with that decision made at that time, I think it was the right decision. However, with the surge of growth that's out there right now, with the extended times that people are taking to get service, I think it's time we need to relook at it and maybe make an adjustment. And especially if it means taking these and starting going cookie cutter for the next few fire stations to get them done quicker, to speed up the time, then so be it.
I mean, a faster way to get rescues on the street is, instead of 2 peak hour rescues, we do 4 or 6.
well,
We
I
don't
have
need
a
a
question
facility
about
for that.
rescues on the street. Go ahead,
So,
Commissioner
I mean,
Oakley.
so there's another way to get there without building facilities faster than we really can be building facilities. Because remember, it's not just one point in the process that we're at max capacity. We're at max capacity through the entire procurement process, from the architectural capacity to the facility capacity to procurement capacity to contractor capacity. Everybody in that process right now is at max capacity. Just go try to build something.
Yeah.
You know, try to build a home, right? I mean,
So if you move, yeah,
so I mean, we're at max capacity in that process, and so the phasing we've outlined is what works best for us throughout the entire process. We can move some pieces around a little bit, but ultimately, you're kind of fixed, because if we accelerate bidding, then we're gonna get even fewer contractors available to bid, which means that increases prices even more than they're accelerating today. So I mean, there was a reason we did it the way the board directed us back in 18, and that's the plan we've been working on.
Yeah, Commissioner
Well,
Oakley,
the,
then me.
the funds you have for servicing that fire station, if you get it built early, doesn't necessarily mean you got the funds to put the people in there and operate it.
We have phased the project, the facilities, so that when they come online, we have the funding to operate them.
Yeah.
If you build them too early, you don't have the funding to operate them.
Like building a school before you get the houses in. So
Right.
Doesn't work.
Or anything else. So if, you know, the alternate is what we're doing with the peak hour rescue program. Because we can put those in existing facilities and they can be reasonably mobile. So
Well-
that is really, which is what, you know, we're trying to work through and see if we can.
I've
go
been
that way.
approached for a temporary solution, but I will bring it to you after Mr. Mariano goes.
Well, why don't we just move it up, like I mentioned earlier? Why don't we just reprioritize
Well-
three?
I think to a certain extent, 1 through, you know, the top ones are all being worked on at the same time anyway.
So I'll go ahead and take chairman's prerogative here.
Just moving.
So I was approached by someone who said that they had approached the county a couple years ago about this, is that if our dilemma right now is not having enough rescue, we can contract out the rescue temporarily until we have more of our own. And it's our same firefighters who are working for those companies that are, you know, manning those ambulances that could be available, parked around the county to help us. So right now, I think they just do transport, but I've been told that they can also do rescue.
I thought they did do rescue.
They're different classifications of transport, and we allow the privates to do a certain level than that. We don't allow them to do the initial
Advanced.
emergency response.
But if
Yes,
we're
yes,
waiting
yeah.
17 minutes for an ambulance to come
So
from
the-
Zephyr Hills to
the-
US 19, why wouldn't we try another alternative till we build up our own capacity?
You have two issues. You have.
Well, yeah, that's not right.
It's something else to 19 that could work.
You have a utilization rate on
That took
rescues that we're
45
trying to
minutes.
meet, and we're trying to stay below 30%. A private ambulance tries to stay above 50%, because they're working 12-hour shifts and they're trying to turn a profit, and so they're gonna utilize it. So we're trying to stay below 30, which means our issue is not necessarily the number of rescues, but it's also where they are. We have, as we continue to build, we continue to have houses built where they're not within, just a few miles of a fire station, which is where our rescues are housed. And so as we build new fire stations, we cut that down, but remember, we went over a decade without building a fire station. And so we added 100,000 people in Pasco County, and we didn't build a fire station. And then you built 38 that came online in 2018? But that was the first one in over a decade.
I think so.
So-
That's what she's talking about.
Well,
what you're
the
doing.
peak hour rescue plan isn't gonna help when they're still having to come 30 minutes away. That's why if we have the other stations 2 and 4 built, and they're much closer, then it's gonna reduce the time for them to get there. And then what if we just put the peak hour rescue plan there until we can utilize and find the firefighters? Or if you have one firefighter from this station and one from this station, and of course we'd have to talk to the chief about that, but just pulling firefighters in, because I'd rather have 3 or 5 firefighters here than have, at a closer location, than have 20 at another location that's 30 minutes away. We need to make sure they're located in the proper positions and proper locations.
Then the peak hour rescue program's the way to do it, but you put them in existing facilities.
But we need a
Because
facility
your
that's
existing
close.
facilities on 19, on the 54 corridor and the 301 corridor, which is really where your peak calls are, we have existing facilities there. So it's put the peak hour rescue units in the facilities that we have and then let them be mobile during the day. As opposed to building 2 and 4. Because 4 splits the difference between 15 and 37 on 54. And then 2 is out in Wesley Chapel, and it's 54 and
Well,
Meadow, thank you, I always get the Meadow
I
wrong.
can't keep any numbers.
3
Meadow
is-
Point. So, they both help, and they're needed, but if you really want to trim the program, you go with a peak hour rescue program that we're proposing.
3 is at Majestic, and which is gonna alleviate Embassy near 19. And that is gonna significantly reduce the timing if someone's in Beacon Woods and needs a rescue, so they'll get the one from Majestic instead of having to wait for them to get all the way from Embassy.
Well, every new fire station's gonna help, but the issue right now is the peak call volume. And so the peak hour rescue program that we're already working to stand up is the right way to attack it, and let us build 2 and 4 on the schedule that the board's already approved for 2 and 4.
It will help, but it's still, the distance needs to be taken into consideration, and it's not.
And the distance isn't gonna be fixed with 2 or 4. Where we have the issues is not the 2 and 4 zones. It's in areas outside of those, where we don't have a new fire station programmed yet.
A question, because on here, you're talking about existing station remodel, but don't we have issues with another fire station on 19?
Well, Fire Station 19 is the one we're replacing.
Let's
It's
see
in design and should be out on the street after 18 and 3.
But how is the, where are we with the existing one? Because I thought we had to move some stuff out of
We
there.
did temporarily, I think those repairs are done. But that needs to be replaced
Yeah.
immediately. And that's why it's on the program.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
We had a piece of property there that we lost, otherwise we probably would be almost done building that one. And we had to go back to scratch
Could have-
and buy
could have
another piece of
remodeled
property.
part of Veteran, or Leisure Lane with some of that money. Commissioner Mariano.
Thank you. Dan, I do agree with you, the rescue program that we have going on is great, and Commissioner Fitzpatrick, years ago, we did a workshop with the fire stations, and that was one of the things we actually brought up, where you can take that mobile unit and you can move it from here to there, depending on the call volume. Their schedule of work in the peak 12 hours is perfect, because
Yeah.
that's when the most things are. So that flexibility gives us a shot right away at low cost to make it happen as we kind of keep on going. What I'd like to bring up too is, like, years ago, we talked about the hospital stay, the time it takes that these guys stay at the hospitals. And I just was informed by someone that it actually, the hospitals have to get, are supposed to get us done in a certain amount of time where we can start charging them. So I would like us to take a close look at how long they're staying, how this is repeating, and then let those hospitals know if they don't improve their performance of taking our people that we're bringing to them, that we're gonna start penalizing them.
Well, Madam Chair,
Understand.
can I get, let me
Yeah.
jump on just so you're aware. So we had that conversation in the meeting we had last week as well, so, I did reach out to, the hospital system CEO, so we're going to, now, you know, on the west side, you guys will need to, if you have relationships there, you'll wanna work on that. Having conversations with people more central on the east side of the county. So we're gonna have a sit down to see what we can do. They don't seem to be as bad on
They're better.
Yeah, I think
southern,
they're right.
southern, eastern part of the county. I think it's more on the west side where we're seeing the majority of those issues, those holdups happening.
Delay time at hospitals
times
is
are more
about
in the
30
west.
minutes right now?
Yeah,
More of the west, right?
it's about, we studied that in detail, and it's been pretty consistent. It's about 30 minutes overall as an average drop time, we call it, drop time.
Yeah.
By the time the ambulance arrives
Which
at the
is-
hospital, so they're back.
I thought
available.
one fell off
It
recently
did
though.
peak out.
Yeah, one fell off recently.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, yes, I think those are conversations, if you have relationships with some of your
Yeah.
administrators or CEOs on that side of the county,
I've got to go in and meet the
have a sit down.
CEO.
I'm doing it over here.
So I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Some are better than others.
any more questions on fire rescue?
I would still like to see Fire Station 2 and 4 be on the fiscal budget for this year.
It's not physically possible.
For construction, it is. It's design. I mean, I'm sorry, for construction, I think we're planning on trying to bid that late 23, but it'll be operating 24.
Yeah,
So it will be under construction in 23, but later in 23.
What month in 23, roughly?
Probably 12 to 15 months from now.
so.
That's
late-
24.
Late in.
No, that's
20.
late 23.
Madam Chair?
Yeah,
Question, as far as in building, if we're gonna contract these out, we're gonna build them about the same time, are we better off putting the contracts out where someone can bid on 2 projects instead
yeah, I
of
was just
one?
gonna
Yeah,
ask
it's
that.
better to do them individually.
It can't be for the structure. It can't be. I mean, we should build them exactly the same, I mean, come on.
Unless it's the same contractor that's bidding for
Contractors,
two.
if you have all the contractors take the same job, they're gonna have to split their crews.
Yeah,
So the administrator's right, that you can get a fire station built faster if you have 2 different
Yeah, I would agree with
contractors
that.
building
Yeah.
the
Two
same
different
plan.
sections. Yeah.
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 And
If you
most
did-
of the,
Cause they don't have the capacity right now.
we're, the ones that generally bid on ours, it's a big job for them. And so it's one that takes their full effort.
They could
So
be
to
on
give them
job A
several,
doing the pipe over here, when he's done with the job A number 1 over here doing the pipe, and now he takes his crew the next day and moves them to the pipe over here, or not the next
yeah,
day.
well,
the
they're
next
all
week.
subs anyway. I mean, it's ultimately, it's better to bid one, get it out under contract, and go out with another one, and keep the competition on each individual one. All right, libraries.
Library general obligation bond project, I think, is a better story. We have two branch libraries that are completed, 3 currently under construction. The Wesley Chapel Seven Oaks branch library will be our 8th library, but it is not a general obligation bond project, but it nevertheless is moving forward. The constitutional officer budget requests.
Can I back up on that?
Yes, ma'am.
A second. So, the Centennial Library, guys, if you haven't been there, it's so much nicer than it was. It was so dated. But we're trying to add a playground, and you know, it's a struggle to find the money. But however, I personally think libraries should be more than just the building. It's county land, and it can offer other amenities to the community nearby. So I think we should have a mindset to look at what else can we do on these properties. And I think they all could have a outdoor reading area, outdoor playground, picnic, you know, a shelter of some sort where you can go outside and have outdoor classes. So I just want to expand our thoughts on these libraries.
I think there is a little money in this 23 on the CDBG side.
240, so we're tearing down the Anderson house.
Right, so there is money to start that process, but it's gonna be small projects over a period of years to make that happen in Centennial.
I'm just saying, going forward, guys, be looking at your libraries and the land around it and see what more we can do to make them assets to the community around it.
Yeah, some of them have been straying.
Commissioner Mariano?
I mean, if there's land available to put the money in for a playground, it should be easy.
Yeah.
I mean, even Regency.
Regency's
We
one
own
of-
a ton of land right there.
Yeah, yeah, so there could be more happening there on the public land. Okay.
So the timeline for the submission of constitutional officer budget, we have 3 that were due May 1st, and we have received those. The property appraiser his budget is due June 1st, next week. And then the tax collector's budget is due August the 1st. So the budgets that we have received, we have the sheriff's budget at $121 million. For the 22 adopted, you'll notice we took the detention center out of that 22 adopted number just to make it easier to compare those figures. And so the sheriff's office request increased by almost 10% or $10.8 million. Supervisor elections budget increased by 4.4%, and this is primarily increases to employee health and employee retirement. We have the clerk and comptroller's budget increase. I see the clerk is on the agenda for later on, so I will let her speak to that budget. You'll notice that the sheriff's budget does not include the 10 officers that he requested. That's part of the budget, and that depends on the number that we get from the property appraiser, whether or not we have the $1.7 million to add those 10 additional officers. If we now turning to utilities, for the most part, is keeping up with growth. The top line there is the American Water Works Association recommended the number of employees per wastewater and water connection. You'll notice that we aren't at that line, however, we are at the same slope, and so we are keeping up with that. And so these, for the most part, these additional employees are being paid with through growth in the system. The municipal solid waste, you'll notice the bars there are the tons of solid waste brought to the waste-to-energy plant. The blue bar there, that's the current waste-to-energy plant capacity. We are bringing on the 4th burner, and that 4th burner capacity will take that capacity from about 350 million tons to about 500,000 tons. And if we brought that 4th burner on today, you can see that we would be nearly at capacity. And so by the time that burner comes online in 24, 25, we expect that that will be nearly at capacity. And so we'll be looking at other options for moving forward to address the solid waste.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
So I think this is huge numbers we have to put together to get this extra burner, right?
Yes, sir.
And by the time it's built, it's going to be probably at capacity. Recently was up at Rogers Park. in their park area, they've got this giant bin where people can take recycling. Not just like the bottles for whatever, just they can bring it in. Recycling is now making better money, as you say, Dan. So we're making better revenue for that anyway. But every bit that we take out of the stream that goes into that makes it not only just having the volume go out, but it makes the burn rate better so the waste plant can function more effectively. I think as part of a plan coming up, we should look and have something going forward to say, okay, we're gonna go and put it in all our parks. If someone's gonna run a special event with tourist development like we used to do, we're gonna bring out recycled containers, but we should have them out there anyway. So I think we need to focus in the county, recycling everywhere. And up north, I know they even take landscaping materials. Well, they'll take them, put them in special paper bags, bring them to it so they don't go in the regular waste stream as well. We need to go look at all the avenues because we don't want to spend the money for another burner. We won't have the money to spend for another burner. We need to go get the more efficiency about all the recycling and not just the plastics, but for lawn maintenance, et cetera, if there's a better way. Maybe we can talk to Merrill Brothers to see if there's something we can do. Maybe we can work with our landscapers that have to bring it there or bring it somewhere else, and maybe we can find some better ways to use what we're doing.
I think our landscaping stuff's already
Well, a lot of it goes to
it's already a separate stream anyway.
sometimes it goes somewhere else.
Right.
What I'm saying is we can work with what we've got. It could be better.
It
It could be an
goes
improvement.
somewhere else, I'm fine with that too. We have some C&D landfills too that aren't ours, that are managed by the people. So the board last month approved a contract to develop a solid waste master plan. Enhanced recycling will be part of the effort they look at and to see what kind of impact that would have on the future of the solid waste operation. So that will be part of what that plan looks at.
But short term, we should be able to do some things.
Yep, and we will be doing that.
And then finally, to wrap up, by June 1st, the property appraiser will provide us the preliminary taxable assessed values, so we'll have some idea what the property tax revenue will be going into next year. July 1st, the property appraiser will deliver the final taxable assessed values. We will set the trim, or the board will set the trim on July 12th, trim being the truth and millage. And it's the process by which the county informs residents what we anticipate the millage rate will be for the next fiscal year. So the millage rate that you set in July can be lower, but it cannot be higher than the millage rate that you adopt in September. And so that is all we've got for you. We'd be happy to answer any further questions you might have.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Mariano.
Are we going to do a follow-up meeting with all the initiatives and talk about those as well?
Yeah,
Once we get
Yes, sir.
So we will, once we get the property appraiser's preliminary number, we will finalize our list and our recommendation of the board based on the feedback we got. And we'll sit down with you, individually and go through the details like we've done in the past to include the fund profiles, the 10-year, 5 and 10-year fund profiles on the major funds. So you can see what decisions today impact in the future. And then we'll be bringing back the trim at the July 12th meeting. So that's the plan, is to do it that way. And we're taking the input information we have that we're hearing today as part of that. We can have a discussion at the late June board meeting if the board wants. I would not set up a separate workshop for that. I would just have a discussion at the board meeting if that's what we want to do.
On this list, are these asked initiatives or funded initiatives?
Those are asks. There's nothing above the funding line right now because I don't know what the property appraiser's number is. So I have not made a recommendation. The individual branches have prioritized theirs, but until I get the number from the property appraiser, I'm not going to rank and prioritize and decide where the line is to recommend to the board.
Okay, so but something very important to me, and I
That's why we're
mentioned it to
here.
you in the meeting, is code enforcement. And it's the #1 issue on the west side. We have 300 structures ready for demolition. The burned mobile home on Buena Vista, it's been there for a couple of years, just came down, so that's good, that's done. But we also have the initiative of trying to get the commercial properties to put the landscaping back in that they let die. That takes a lot of manpower from staff. And right now, I think I don't know if Sally wants to speak up, but the way they're doing it, I believe is they meet once a month and they're doing 4 properties a month. Sally, are you keeping up with that? Because I knew 4 went out, but I thought there was a month or 2 where you guys didn't meet, potentially.
Commissioner, with regard to the meetings with regard to looking at those sites, as you recall, when code enforcement started assessing the sites and for those that weren't in compliance and they needed to go for a pre-application meeting, when we kicked it off, it created a bottleneck where we had pushed out pre-applications meeting almost by 2 months with the volume. That created a problem for all of your other businesses and projects that were coming in. So we worked with staff to create a governor because this is our planning staff that's impacted by it. So we did create a governor whereby we were only bringing forward 4 projects a month to go before site plan review and requiring them to go through that process.
So if code enforcement had their own site plan reviewer, rather than having to go through the building department's site plan reviewer, because the code enforcement tells me they don't know how to review plans, maybe we can avoid that and not have this issue.
Commissioner, keep in mind, when I say site plan review, that is going through your planning and zoning review to make sure that they go through the process to get an approved site plan that lays out all the requirements associated with the land development code.
It shouldn't, I don't know, maybe it just shouldn't be so laborious. If their site plan has failed, they just have to bring it up, give us a plan. I mean, it's pretty obvious if it's gone.
But that plan has to meet your land development codes in any other state or.
So is there something that,
The review process is part of that.
well, is there something we can do policy-wise and legally to say, if you've let your landscape die, you now have to follow the new landscape, up-to-date landscape code, submit a new plan, and then not go through the review part,
Well, you'd
but
still
just
be
start it
doing-
over?
You'd still be doing the review part if you submit a new plan.
Well, I know, but they're going through, looking at the old stuff. It's pretty clear when you look at the bank at Old 54 and Little, they took out everything, all the trees. I mean, they're gone. I don't know why you have to review what was supposed to be there when it's pretty clear they're not following any landscape, and just hit them with the new landscape ordinance and bring it up to date instead of looking what they had in the past.
I'm sorry, with those that have an approved site plan but fail to maintain their landscaping, we're simply obtaining that site plan, and staff will meet with the zoning, planning and zoning team just to make sure they go over the existing site plan, then go back and let them know they have to bring their landscaping up to code in accordance with the approved plan. So that does not have to go through a full process.
Okay, well, that's good. But, if we had someone, we're trying to get businesses back on track, but if we had someone that was dealing with the current newer businesses that didn't let it fall into disrepair, it'd save us all a lot of trouble. And just so you guys know, I don't know if you're even aware, we had a brand new 7-Eleven on 54 who put their landscaping in, and as soon as they got the CO, they took their trees out. So this is an issue that we have to stay on top of, and we just need to, seems to me if we had someone who made sure before it fell in disrepair, say, hey, we require you to keep this up, we wouldn't have to go back in and start from the beginning again.
That's what code enforcement is supposed to do.
I know, but they don't have enough people, they don't,
Well,
I'm hoping that the two, I'm hoping,
That's,
There's a BPI for more code enforcement officers.
right, so there's 2 here. I've got a lot of businesses on the west side that have let it all go to pot.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
we gotta make sure we're utilizing them properly as well. We're not always utilizing code enforcement as they should be utilized. I mean, I had Pepin Academies that reached out to me, my office, and said they got cited for parking. Because, I'm just being honest, somebody's county commission office called code enforcement to go out there because cars were backed up. I live in a community
Wow, every school has backed up cars.
where I live. The bus stop is 2 houses down from me. For the last 15 or 17 years, cars back up in front of my house 6 times a day.
Yeah.
That's okay. They're
look
picking
at
their kids
Trinity
up.
Elementary.
I don't have a problem. And if I need to get out, they'll move. So that's an example of, we're not always using them properly. We're gonna take their time away from what they should be doing to go out there and do traffic enforcement. Because there's some cars parked around some houses.
When there's citizens that call your office constantly, and it's not just 1 or 2 or 3, and when you have 10 or more people that are calling you, and it's not just they're parked up in a line going around. It's not as bad when people can't get to their homes because it is that bad and they can't get back there. They can't even cut through other side streets because the parents are parking up and down 7 to 10 cars up and down every side street.
It happens
So
all
it's
over the
not
county
just-
during
Another
school
reason to
yeah.
open up
hours,
Osteen.
you know?
All the time.
But with Calusa, law enforcement went out there and they put signs up there that they were not allowed to park on the side street and have their kids released as a walker and pick them up from there. They have to go through the car line. So the parents have to be following the laws and the rules.
Well, I didn't want to
going
get in
through
the weeds on it,
car
but I'm giving that as an example of, let's make sure we're using code enforcement properly. You know, instead of taking their time out to do, in my opinion, that's not something code enforcement should be spending their time on.
Well, I was thinking that we should have
Work
some
with the
commercial, specializing in commercial, and then some residential.
Commissioner, I think we just hired someone to run that operation. Why don't we
Yeah.
give them time to
I
get
need to
their feet
meet
on the
this person,
ground
by the way.
and come up with some ideas about the best way to operate that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we just hired somebody new to run it, so let's let them have an opportunity to evaluate the situation and come up with some recommendations. Operationally, to Sally and then me. But that's how they operate and organize is really an operational issue.
If we catch it before it all dies, we're better off. All right, Commissioner Mariano.
Yeah, so, and I saw the code enforcement item as well, and my thoughts were a little bit different. I don't know how many citations we've written over the past couple of years compared to what we were doing before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind looking at that comparison, because of what I'm hearing, we're not writing as many anyway.
Yeah, I've heard that
But as
too.
far as the landscaping part goes, I think if they had an approved site plan, if there's always a streamline the process, say, follow the plan that you've got, or the citation, the fines are staying in place. And you give them a certain amount of time, maybe that's the way to handle that. Another thing coming up is, at the last board meeting, we had a presentation from Kelly Funk about the homeless stuff. And we talked about the expiration of the trespass agreements.
Yeah. I
So
think
the sheriff has now come to where they're gonna put them in so they can stay in there until someone either sells the property or opts out.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot better.
I think so
However,
too.
So now, and I say, with the budget, they're comfortable with what you guys have set up, so great job of setting it up. They're gonna put more resources into their behavioral health intervention team to actually start going to these camps. Now, we're gonna have to deal with, I think, cleaning up, code enforcement violations as well, so there's gotta be a focus with that coming up. Because we can't just go in there and do a one-shot thing. It'll happen just like Leisure Beach just happened. We cleaned the thing out, we got rid of the people, and they came right back in with more stuff. I mean, Chuck McCarthy
And
from
whose
Home
property
Depot.
is it?
They're different landowners.
Well, I just think the landowners have a little responsibility.
I agree, but if they're not there and they're out of towners, which a lot of people, these are out of town
They gotta
property
secure
owners.
their property.
I
Or
understand.
grub it.
I understand. So what I'm saying is, you've got to clear it out and then you got to make sure it stays clear. And that's going to take code enforcement people to go work in conjunction to make that happen. I tell you, when we did that cleanup in Gulf Highlands, there was this one house where older gentleman lived there, beyond his own capabilities, probably like 90 years old. And guess what? Some young people, drug heads, moved in and they just trashed the place and loaded up with trash. Our code people did a phenomenal job going in there, but that's going to have to be maintained as well. So depending on where the code's going to go and what we're going to focus on, I'm going to find out what they're doing. We shouldn't have 300 demolition permits sitting. They should be done. So I think I work with Christy Sims to find out what she needs to help move the process through, and that team. We got to work.
That team is gone, that HR
Well-
team, I think the last person just resigned.
Somehow, Christy Sims did a phenomenal job pushing through, Patrick Moore as well. We need to find out what they need to get the stuff through and get it through the process.
Well, Madam Chair, before we go to Clerk, real quick, Mr. Steinsteiner, we talked about possibly finding out if the MSTU with new development down the road for fire rescue and possibly the sheriff's office would work. Were we able to
I
find anything
have
out yet?
found no jurisdiction that has a program like that. I have some doubts whether it could be done, really. I think where you're, right now, where you're missing the boat on new growth paying for itself is through your impact fee process. Fire has not updated their impact fees in years. And so, in essence, your GO bonds and the MSTU are pushing forward, are subsidizing growth. So if you want growth to pay for itself, at least on the capital side, we need to look at the impact fee program through all stages. But fire is one that is particularly, Parks is coming forward with some revisions that the board authorized, but fire is one that needs to look at their fees.
Thank you.
Here's Mariana.
One thought, and this question is for Sally. Sally, a while ago we talked about if you had, there's an engineer from one department to another department. I didn't see an engineer in this budget. Did you request one? Do you want to get one?
Commissioner, thank you for asking. We have engineers positions available. Unfortunately, we struggle to fill the positions. We have engineers that are leaving the county because we can't compete with the private sector. So it's, when we get someone, it's actually someone who has a passion for working for local government. Because as you can understand, the economy of scale is very different for an engineer in private sector opposed to working for local government. So we have positions available, we're just not able to recruit.
We got a third-party engineering firm to help us with that program anyway. So, a consultant that would help us do the review.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick. And then
So
I have a
also
question.
discussing code real quick and properties and the landowners having to make sure their property is being fenced off. And then what happens when they're cutting through the fences? And then how do we help stop that? Because there's a property on 54 specifically that they're just keep cutting the fence and going.
Private property.
I think that's,
Place-
I think that one on 54 is our property.
Trespass?
Which property?
The one that Kelly showed, is she here?
No.
The one that was shown in the slideshow might be our property.
And there's another one that's owned by Walmart.
I mean, it's a code
Right
enforcement
next
issue
to
or a
Colonial
sheriff's
Hills.
issue if somebody keeps destroying their property.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone went out there and cleaned that one up. I don't know either. Okay, so I wanted to throw some out at you guys and see what the thoughts are on the board. I know this is not a popular thing to do, but we had to do it once before when our deputies' salaries needed to be raised when we were losing them all to Hillsborough County. In meeting with the sheriff and going over numbers, we have 85, Hernando County has 85, let's see if I can say this right, per 1,000. We would need 399 deputies to meet Pinellas ratio, 120 to meet Hillsborough, and 85 to meet Hernando. So Pinellas County is at 1.86, we're at 1.03. Now, it did say it takes 30-month delay of getting new deputies on the street. I don't know how many are in the pipeline, but we've got 10 in the budget, and Dan has found money to get 10 more.
Well,
But
I just qualify it.
Yeah.
Let's see what the property appraiser gives us.
That's what I was gonna wait for. I was gonna bring up the same thing. I was waiting to see what his numbers were.
okay, well, we'll see
But
what
the
it
sheriff
comes,
hasn't.
but I'm just wondering if, you know, we all love Pasco County. It's, living here, it's very inexpensive to live here, but that comes at a price. And at what point do we have a responsibility to fund fire and safety at a higher level. So I
I've
just
asked
want
the-
you to think about that.
Madam Chair, I've asked the sheriff several times for an answer on that number of that 1.8 per thousand. And to my best knowledge, I don't know that they've hired any deputies in the 6 years I've been here for the road work, out on the road. They haven't got the answer, and I've asked it 2 or 3 times to the sheriff.
Okay, well, let's-
So I think our sheriff does a real good job at that ratio, because we are a pretty safe county. We've got to be pretty proud of our citizens here, so.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get that number. How many have been hired? Maybe we can get
Yeah.
it in the last 5 years annually.
And
But then we also have to know how many have left and gone to work other places.
Wait for the property appraiser's numbers.
All right, so,
See what-
but
Yeah, so
I'm just putting that, planting that seed
We can
there.
let the clerk go.
Weren't there numbers in the budget last year to hire new law enforcement officers?
Well, they get money every year to hire.
They had
I mean,
a
Hire new,
specific
but-
line item.
there was not a specific line item last year for them to hire law enforcement officers.
Madam Chair?
Yep,
The grant.
So I had a conversation recently with Chase, even this last night. So I'm gonna let him, maybe at the next board meeting, he'll come in, he'll talk to that. I don't want to say that, but I want to say the board, 6 years ago, pretty much gave the sheriff the budget. Here's what you've got, here's your income, 50% of the growth going through. We haven't controlled what he's done with his budget numbers. Now, I think he has added law enforcement, but I'm gonna let him talk to the numbers specifically, because I think
Yeah.
your specific question's important.
Right.
Patrol deputies or other deputies, et cetera. So we'll let him come forward and do that presentation, but for all those years, he's been his administrator, controlling where that money goes.
I agree.
So if he hasn't changed, maybe he saw better need, like behavioral health, ILP, whatever, he's made those decisions where to put the money. We funded him, I think, pretty well.
Well,
So all that said,
that's where I'm gonna say, and I did ask the sheriff if he would be more transparent with his budget, as some of the other counties are, and so I'm hopeful that we'll see more transparency.
and
But
one-
I still think we fund him lower, on the very low end of the deputies at the sheriff's office in the state. I haven't
Madam Chair?
seen what we fund our fire station. I mean, you can go to Florida Tax Watch and kind of look at how Florida counties compare and see where we fall compared to the other counties in the state. And there's no doubt that, even that he's not one of the even medium-funded sheriff's office in the state, so. For most of those categories, we rank pretty low. And I think we get a great quality of life here in Pasco County for the amount of taxes we pay, but is that where we want to be, down at the bottom?
And Madam Chair,
Yeah.
is the 10%, the 50 to 40, so is that 10%, are we using it specifically for law enforcement growth between the jail and hiring new full-time employees?
So the delta between if he got half and getting only 40%, so part of that would go to the 10 deputies he's asked for. And then probably the balance, if not more, would go to the increased cost of the jail. I'd have to run the numbers on that.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
So I think when you look at Pasco County, it's a very unique county. We're 91% unincorporated.
Right.
We should have more efficiencies. You just saw the chart with utilities. The state, well, the normal national level line is up here. We staff down lower than that. We're more efficient than other areas. We don't have cities, big cities, kind of bumping around all the stuff we're doing. So we should be more efficient anyway, and we have been for years. I think people have responded very well to the penny for Pasco, the way we spent the money for them. I think people respond to the MST for the fire stations, the 4 GO bonds. So I think we're doing things the right way, and I think we gave the sheriff a lot of flexibility to spend the money how we wanted to. And when a few years back, when the deputies' raises were losing deputies, they came to us, and what do? We put a 3-year plan together to raise that payout. I don't want to lose firefighters. I want to be able to hire engineers. I want my stormwater people to make a good living. I want all the people to make a good living, and we got to be competitive to do that. So I think coming up with the rates, compensation studies we're going to do is going to lead us to where we need to be. And in these crazy times right now, it could be a short-term bump, it could be a longer-term bump. We don't know.
All right, so Chase just texted me. They were having a meeting with Kona this morning, but in FY18, they had 564 deputies. In FY19, they had 566 deputies. In FY20, they had 585. In FY21, they had 592. In FY22, 601. It's funny, that's different than the number he gave me before. So when I had my meeting with him, he told me they had 550 deputies and 400 civilian staff with 125 child protection services, so I'm a little confused.
So, Madam Chair, the increase of what you started with 564 to 601 was 43. So he's added 43 by those numbers. He told me he thought it was about 50, that's why I didn't want to quote the number. So, pretty much in line.
But that's only keeping, because we got more people moving in, that's only keeping that ratio the same, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting above that, that's
We're
what
not-
I'm saying.
we're not
And
moving
we are not gonna get above that if we keep going on the rate we're going.
Yeah.
So what is our responsibility? That's all. Okay, any other questions? Are you asking for another attorney?
I have a BPI for 2 attorneys in the
Good.
process.
I was telling them, ask for attorneys. Okay, yeah.
Court.
Oh, okay, that's why I'm asking. Anyone have anything to say?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So for the record, Nikki Alvarez, Pasco County Clerk and Comptroller. I just want to thank Madam Chair and County Commissioners for allowing me to be here to present my office budget that was submitted for the next fiscal year. I respect each of you, and I know that you fully understand and appreciate the need to provide premier services to our citizens, attract and retain talented and skilled workforce, and prioritize the long-range plans for Pasco County's
37.
growth.
Overtime.
There's no reason why Pasco County can't achieve the premier county status, but to be successful in doing that, all leaders and decision makers must be on the same page. We are partners, and we are in this together. Do you have the?
Yes, sir.
So I only have 53 slides. No, all right, so my budget requirements to attain the premier status totals just over 14 million, as shown on this slide, and is comprised of 3 components. First, we have the continuation of services. Then we have the balance of the CGIS funding, and also the court-related local requirements, which is the courthouse annex. My budget request is a 6.1% increase over last year's budget request. The continuation level component represents the same funding as in the current fiscal year, with increases for employee compensation, mandated increases for Florida retirement, and increases for group health insurance. The request includes an average increase of 5.3% for employee compensation per the county administrator's recommendation. Should the county's average increase be more than 5.3%, I expect, and the county administrator has agreed to adjust my office's budget proportionately. The second component of my budget submittal is the Multi-Agency Criminal Justice Information System, or CGIS. I believe on slide 10 it was called Court-Related Technology. So this is required for the county to pay pursuant to section 29.008 sub 1 Florida statutes. Last year the county funded only about $117,000 for this component. This amount was short the amount that's on the slide, $671,465 for the full cost of administering the CGIS. I've shown that Florida law requires the county to pay for the CGIS, and that my office has been paying the county's responsibility since January of 2017. The county agrees that it is responsible for the IT expenses and agreed to fully fund this expense in the next fiscal year. My office can no longer fund the county's responsibility. Therefore, I request the board to fund 100% of the CGIS expenditures next fiscal year as required by law. The third component of my budget submittal covers local requirements, specifically the Annex Courthouse in Newport Richey for approximately $7.3 million. I have illustrated that Florida law requires the county to fund court-related local requirements for the Clerk and Comptroller's office pursuant to section 29.08 sub 2A1 and 2B Florida statutes. While CGIS and local requirements are pending decision in court case number 2021-CA-2635, I'm requesting that the county fully fund CGIS as previously agreed and reconsider funding the local requirements. I need your support in making my budget comply with the law. So what is not included in my budget is any additional compensation to match the county's average increase, so anything over the 5.3% increase. Also, what's not included is the impact of the jail transfer from the sheriff's office to the Board of County Commissioners, and back pay for the CJIS component as well as the courthouse annex that was requested for this fiscal year. While I expect the jail transfer to have a significant impact on my office, due to the early stages of this transition, a viable determination of the number of positions required cannot be estimated at this time. The county administrator has recommended, and I concur, to defer this component of our budget request until later this summer after further analysis. On behalf of my dedicated staff, I want to thank you for your continued support and the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. County Administrator, is that 671 in the,
Both of those items are being litigated currently.
oh, the 671 is being litigated too? Okay.
And until I have a number from the property appraiser, I have not gone through and prioritized what we're gonna add to the budget.
And just curious, what do you think is, for the transfer from the sheriff to the BCC, what are you thinking? What, I mean, you are auditing the, what is it that you're auditing?
So really a lot of it is the fiscal component that's coming from the jail to the sheriff to the Board of County Commissioners. The list is being finalized this week. It'll probably be emailed out to the county tomorrow, because we initially started with a very long list, and what we've identified is basically everything. And what we're doing is putting a priority level. Priority level 1 would be part of what I'm going to call the accounting instead of an audit, let's say, from the external firm. A 2 would be something that the county and the sheriff would work out outside of the audit. 1 is to make sure that we can fit it in within the time frame that is, because time is short. Fit it in within the time frame, as well as the fitting it in within the cost to hire in an external auditor to come, auditing firm to come. The list, it will be finalized. It will cover things such as capital assets. It'll cover balances that'll be coming over financially, any accounts that they have, to make sure that what you're getting, what is being transferred is what you'll get on October 1. It's a long list. It's over 100 items.
Okay, but after that's done, what more do you need?
My finance department is going to have a big impact. So now that you are bringing
Would it
on-
not be, I mean, if the sheriff was doing this with X amount of people?
She doesn't
We
do
don't-
finance for the sheriff.
No, if the sheriff, but the sheriff was, someone was doing it at the sheriff's office. So is it one person? Is it
Do
2
we-
people?
Do we know how many people are coming over from the sheriff's office? I don't think anybody are coming over from the sheriff's office, right? So,
That's why you wanted to wait until
Right.
the summer to see what those numbers actually are,
We
so they can
don't
work through it.
know how many people
Exactly.
they have.
You don't know.
We're trying to
doesn't know.
understand, like, how many invoices do you process for the jail? And
And they can't give us that answer?
I think it's hard for them because they have invoices from every aspect of their organization. I don't know if they separate it out from, well, this is jail invoices and this is non-jail invoices.
So then how does he know how much of it was costing him? And so I'm a little concerned at these numbers then. Are they real?
Well, what about the chart of accounts? It should be listed on a general ledger, on the detailed general ledger.
That's going to be,
Are we just guessing how much it cost him to run the jail?
I'm assuming you're talking
Yes,
on the
so
sheriff's
we've
side.
gotten expenses from them, yes, we're going through that.
So it's a guess?
No.
If we did, no.
We are working through that with them. There is still work to be done. I think my only concern is that, right now the clerk does all the finance for the board, so about $1.8 billion worth of work, and we're adding $50 million to that. So it's about that's about 2%. To the volume
Okay,
of
so
financial
that's-
work. So, I mean, I can't imagine it's gonna be significantly more than a 2% impact.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
And Jeff, I'll just ask you, and then if the question's okay to be asked. So when I look at the budget, for years, it's been a steady increase through all the clerks
Whose
we had
budget?
in the past. Clerks.
Okay.
All right, and this year, for continuation of service, we're at 6 million. If the CJIS funding's included, 671. The big scary number is the $7 million number. So now it's like double what's there. How can that be justified to run an office from 6 million that need to go to 14 million? Where would that money go?
That was previously paid by the state.
That's
That has never been, up till last year, that was never been classified as a local requirement by any of the clerks to date. The last year's budget was the first time that was identified as a local requirement. I don't, as I told you in last budget session, I don't believe that's a local requirement. The clerk disagrees with me. And that's going to be the big ticket in the declaratory judgment action between the county commission and the clerk.
No more questions. Thank you.
And I think that pool, if I'm not mistaken, it's so, we don't get to keep our fines, and I don't think we get our ticket money from the sheriff's office. I think all that money goes into that pool, right? That's what funds that. When those code enforcement, yeah, so we're paying in to that fund. Okay.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a correction. The state does not fund my court operations. It's a fee-based structure, so it is fees that are assessed that are from the court. We collect it, we keep a portion of it pursuant to statutes, we submit the rest to the Florida Department of Revenue. And the amount that we are keeping is to run the court operations pursuant to Florida statute.
So where's this money coming from now?
It's, I mentioned last year that I don't have enough revenue to cover the expenses because I'm duplicating services in an auxiliary courthouse. So what happens is I get money from the Clerks of Court State Trust Fund, so other clerks' offices are funding the deficit in my office for court-related operations.
And isn't that where the fees money goes? The leftover fees money? When someone pays a code enforcement fine?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they told me from Miami-Dade. That's where that trust fund gets funded.
The trust fund gets funded from other clerks' offices.
Well, all the
bring
fees in the
more
state,
revenue.
all the fees from all the counties go into that trust fund.
Not the clerking of the clerk's trust fund. No, it is the clerk's revenue that comes in that is more than the expenses of the clerks. So I don't put money into that trust fund. I receive money from that trust fund, and it's only the clerk's money that goes into the fund. I don't know if you talk to a commissioner or a clerk in Miami-Dade.
Okay, I'll ask again.
And, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Last year, did we fund 1/3 of the CJIS fees?
No, you funded about a little over 117,000, so not a third.
Okay, and Dan, just an
half.
update, I know last year you mentioned
No,
it was
it's not
like,
half.
is this the phasing?
No,
And was this the number that we talked about phasing in over 3 years?
Yes.
So-
Both of them, and
There
so
was
now we're
a-
going after that one too.
Trying to remember the line item.
We said we would pay.
That was wrapped into a line item that was about 1.4 million, and we funded about half of it last year.
If it's an illegally
Yeah, the
expended,
1.2
it's
And
illegally expended.
that's,
I was just asking
yeah, I
about
don't know,
CJIS.
I'd have to go back and look, I don't remember the exact numbers, and what I said was, depending on revenue, we would fund that over a period of 2 to 3 years, depending on revenue.
So would we be looking at funding 2/3 of the
I
671,000?
think I will look at what I will recommend once I get a number from the property appraiser.
And I'm looking only at CJIS
What's
right
your
this
question?
minute, because the other number is a completely
If we're
different
paying that,
analysis.
where was the money?
But as I said, we are litigating
Right.
both of those items, and it may be that the clerk isn't entitled to funding of the CJIS funding either.
I was going to say I doubt that.
So, when you say, and I have a question more for the clerk. So when you say what's not included, does that mean this is still coming?
Well, the first bullet is if you provide more than 5.3% average increase to your team members, I would like that to also happen for my county-funded area of my office. as well. And then the jail's not in there, and then the last bullet is what we were just talking about with the sieges and the local requirements.
So, we're doing a pay study?
Yes,
Does
ma'am.
that
That's
include?
a common class. No,
Yeah,
ma'am.
and does
They
that
went out and
include
paid
her
us. They went
staff?
out and hired a consultant to do theirs.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
okay, yeah.
So if our study says it's a 6% increase for what we're paying our people now, but her study said it's a 5.3% increase.
Well, I don't know what her
What we're
study
paying
says.
now.
We've not seen it.
No?
No. The 5.3 I got from the county
The
administrator.
5.3 is what the state pay raise is in the state budget. And so we kind of have set that as a floor till we want to at least maintain
Okay.
equivalence with what the state gave state employees as
Okay.
part of their budget. We are doing a common class. There will be people that get more than that and people that get less than that based on the market and where they are and what they do. But, you know, an average is exactly that, right? It's an average, and I expect the average to be above 5.3, probably somewhere under 7. So that's kind of the range is where we expect the average, but we're not done yet.
All right, but so we're doing a study different than the way the clerk did a study?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Sorry. Sorry. Yes. Sorry, I heard clerk and, our HR department is doing the common class study in-house. So Barbara and her team are doing that in-house. And that's the same way we did it last time, saved the board, I don't know, $150,000. Yeah.
Good way to go, but
Yep.
if we're gonna study what it says, and it says the number should be 5.1 or 5.5, whatever it is, that's the number we should be using, no?
Well, and
We're not
they'll
studying
have
her,
access to
apparently.
ours, and they can see what we have a lot of job descriptions that are similar. They can see what our change is on some of those job descriptions that are similar.
What the board has done in prior years is whatever the average increase to your salaries, across your board, you've applied that to the constitutionals. So what's being estimated at this point in time is 5.38%. And what we talked about was, and it's the same with all the constitutionals, that whatever the average increase is, it would be the same for all constitutionals.
So that 5.3 for the state, I thought they were trying to play catch-up.
So
I
they
mean,
did
so what'd
two
they do
things.
last year?
The year before, it was I have to go back and look, but I think it was like a 2 or 3.
Yeah, and we
It
were
was like
at
a 2 or
4.
3.
And we did 4 last year, right?
Yeah, but keep in mind, the inflation rate in the state of Florida is over 8. So even 5.3, you're still losing ground. And they didn't do a common class. They just did, what the state did is they did several things. A floor of $15 an hour for every state employee. And then 5.38% pay raise. Now, you don't get both. You know, if getting to the floor is greater than 5.38, you don't get anything else, right? That's what the state did, and then they did a floor for, I think, corrections officers in FDLE.
Yeah, because they couldn't
They actually
hire any.
raised, they did
Yeah.
a specific increase in FDLE and corrections officers.
Because they hadn't
It was
raised them
separate
in
than that.
years.
You know, so that's what the state did. But again, ours is a specific common class study to a specific job description and skills and abilities compared to what the market is for that. And we make specific adjustments based on the almost 500 different job descriptions we have. So it's not a across the board average. There will be an average at the end of it because we'll add them all up and divide by number of employees, but it's not an average. It's based on a common class study. And so some people will get more. You know, we expect the lower pay ranges to see more than that because that's where the real competition is in the market right now. And the mid and upper ranges will probably see that or less than that, depending on where they are and what the competition is.
When will that study be done?
Before you approve a final budget, because it has to be in there. But I expect it to be done sometime in the next month.
Yeah, we have preliminary numbers and we'll have finals the middle of July.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have a question, a little on and off topic. So there is a percentage of fire that we're increasing for them. Well, what if the county comes back higher? Are we gonna hire the
So
firefighters too?
the union negotiated agreement is based on a study we do every year, and that is in their contract. So there's a contracted pay plan, and there is, every year, there's an annual adjustment to that that's outlined in the contract. So there's an approved contract that already says what that's gonna be, and it keeps us at market. And we do a study every year on that, and we think we're pretty close to market with that.
Yeah, I've heard the firefighters say they're okay with their pay.
Yeah.
They're good with their pay, just we need more facilities.
We took care of that 14th.
Yeah,
14th.
yeah.
Yeah, you've been adjusting it every year.
And I think, say with our deputies, they're getting pretty decent pay and
We did
comparatively,
14 as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
14,
we
15, 16.
look at the,
That took 3 years.
Yeah, right.
Well,
we look
I'm
at-
And a
just
military
saying,
rating.
we look at
if
the
we're gonna
firefighters
do it
every year.
For constitutional officers and for the clerk of court, if we're gonna change theirs, even though their study says something, then why would we not do it clear across the board
Well,
for
we do
everyone?
it, so there is a agreement with the union that already outlines the pay raise. We still do a study to make sure that pay raise is still consistent with the market. And if it's still consistent with the market, then we go with the contract. And if it's not, then it's part of, future union negotiations. But that's a negotiated agreement between us and IFF. And I think based on where we think we are right now compared to the market around us, I think we're in a pretty good place compared to where we have been historically.
I'll follow the numbers, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have them in
Okay.
front of me.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope we have better numbers. I think in the last few years, we've been able to have a little bump. And I think the property appraiser is looking at a program too that will find folks who may not be homesteaded correctly. And I had met with those people. I met them at a NACO or FAC conference, and I do believe there are properties out there that are not following the law on the homestead exemption, and I will be happy to see them back in the family. So I look forward to that too. I don't know how long that study's gonna take. Okay.
Well, I think it's an ongoing, he's not brought it to us, we've not done a budget amendment for him to cover the cost of that yet, but it will be an ongoing effort, not a one-time effort.
Yeah, but the one time
Yeah,
is gonna be a biggie.
There's an initial and then there's a long term
But
after that, yeah.
I thought that was an amazing program, and with technology today, just like you have with VRBOs, where data can search many different websites to gather information, you can do that and catch people who are illegally using a homestead exemption. So, which is not cool. Okay, I think we may be done for today. All right, thanks, everybody.